Well, I'll go ahead and get started here. It's 11 o'clock West Coast Pacific Standard Time. Welcome and good morning. And for those that are on the East Coast, good afternoon. My name is Fred Latuperissa. I'm the chair for the National District Export Council and for the Education and Outreach Committee. Before I get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about NADEC, National District Export Council. Our primary goal is to increase awareness of exports, importance of the U.S. economy. Obviously, we're here to enhance and understanding exports. We cover areas such as education, legislative outreach, and engagement with district export councils and stakeholders such as the Department of Commerce. We are a nonprofit organization. Our tax status is 5016 as far as the IRS is concerned. Just to give you a brief overview, we have approximately 1,300 DEC members, which is unique in the sense it's appointed by the Secretary of Commerce. And we have councils, well over 61 councils across 50 states. So that gives you a kind of a brief overview. And we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for this. And events like this, we provide the service in support of the U.S. exporters. Just to give you a little background in terms of what NADEC has done here in the last 12 months, highlights of previous NADEC webinars. We did one back about 6 months ago, doing business in Africa. Great example and introductory. Had a lot of interest on that. And then followed a month later, we did one on doing business in Indo-Pacific. So these are country series that we continue to do, but we also focus on industry sectors. We had one just a couple of months ago, energy in global markets. Upcoming webinars coming in events for those that are still having challenges in doing web design. We've got someone from the deck that's going to be doing a presentation on web design in global markets. And then in August, for those of you that are involved in export controls, compliance, EAR, and ITAR, that's coming up in August. We also have a DEC member that's also been experienced in that field. Then in September, we'll cover logistics, which covers duty rates, movements of goods, and so forth. So that kind of gives you an idea of what NADEC has done in support of that. And of course, all of this is volunteer, and there's no cost to each of you. It's all in support of U.S. exporters. But I also wanted to make sure that I recognize the sponsorships that we have, and specifically the San Bernardino International Airport. And Mike Burrows, he will be one of the speakers. And then the California or Central California District Export Council out of Fresno. They are our key sponsors on that. So thank you very much. And of course, the cooperating sponsors are the U.S. Commercial Service, U.S. Department of Commerce, and Your Web Corporation and XM 2020 Group. So that kind of gets things going on that. We're here. If you're interested in foreign trade zone, and I'm sure many of you are, we're just really excited, including myself, on speakers from California representing the fourth largest economy in the world. And we're going to be discussing on foreign trade opportunities. But what I'd like to do just briefly, rather than individually, but I would like to start with Lexington, and then I'll go to Bernadette, Rojas, and then Mike Burrows. Just a brief bio. I was quite impressed. It was very difficult for me to summarize and narrow everything down in terms of the experience and the trade experience in foreign trade zone. And so we're delighted to have Lexington Brownrigg, director of the Fresno Foreign Trade Zone. She's been 9 years in Fresno and has been a licensed custom broker since the 2018s. She's got expertise in logistics, compliance, and export controls and documentation, and of course, supply chain and management, very diverse. Lexi holds a bachelor's degree in management science from University in San Diego. I'm not that far from that. And Lexington can assist with importing, exporting, and can significantly reduce operating costs. We're always looking forward to that. Duty rates, that's really on the top of the agenda in today's environment, and product timeline. Our second speaker probably doesn't need any introductions. Many of us know you, is the director for the Central Valley and Coastal California, director of the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service out of Fresno. Bernadette has responsibility for, 15 countries throughout Central Valley and Coastal California. She was appointed to the Central Valley and Coastal California back in 2022. And in her capacity, she leads the commercial service officer, and she covers Fresno, Bakersfield, and Ventura. And she promotes and develops U.S. exports from the region while serving as the executive secretary to the Central California District Export Council. Last but not least is the Chief Executive Officer, Mike Burrows, for the Inland Valley Development Agency, San Bernardino International Airport. Mike oversees privatization of the former Norton Air Force Base in Southern California, which includes Alliance California, a Hillwood development. As an established development transportation professional, he's been doing this for 25 years of public and private sector management expertise. Since 1997, he's dedicated himself to transportation, infrastructure, and economic development in the Inland Empire region of Southern California. During his tenure with the Inland Valley, of course, Development Agency and Airport. So that gives you a brief bio of our speakers, where truly, as I mentioned before here, before we got started, is truly where the rubber meets the road. These individuals, they come with a great deal of experience. So if I would multiply to 3, they probably have well over 60 years of experience on that. So having said that, at this time, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Lexington, and you're on the floor, Lexington.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So hi, everyone, and thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here and to share insights about foreign trade zones, how they work, and why they're such a valuable tool for importers and exporters, and also manufacturers. So once again, my name is Lexington Brownrigg, or Lexi. I'm the director of Fresno Foreign Trade Zone, and I'm also a licensed customs broker. So we're in California Central Valley. We're in Fresno or Clovis area. And I typically help companies across our region navigate foreign trade zone applications or compliance. And that's companies that are looking to reduce their costs or improve their supply chain or expand their global footprint. I'm also very proud to serve on the Central California DEC. This group in the Central Valley is made up of a bunch of passionate, experienced professionals, and I learn something every time I engage with the group, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So to get started, we'll be walking through the fundamentals of a foreign trade zone and showing you some of the benefits and how you can leverage them in your supply chain. So first, really quick, I just wanted to go over the history of the Foreign Trade Zone program. So it was created back in 1934 during the Great Depression, and one of its main goals was to move manufacturing to the United States, but also to increase jobs. So if you look on the far right here, you can see from the 2023, over 550,000 employees work in foreign trade zones. So obviously it was successful. And near $950 billion worth of merchandise was received in foreign trade zones. Once again, this is just in an annual year of 2023. And then on the other end, you actually had $150 billion worth of merchandise exported from foreign trade zones. Okay, so these numbers obviously show that foreign trade zones, they're a cornerstone of the global trade infrastructure, and they can offer serious scale and impact for your company. As we go on, you can see how it can work for your business. And then we want to talk about the organization of the Foreign Trade Zone program. So at the top, you have the Foreign Trade Zones Board, which is made up of the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Treasury, and they set the regulations. And then on the other hand, you have U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They're going to enforce those regulations and ensure compliance. And then all across the United States, you're going to have territorial zones. So once again, we're in the Central Valley. We fall under Merced, which is zone 226. And then inside those areas, those territorial zones, you'll have subzones. So when you see a subzone, it might look like an individual company is only bringing in their product, or it could be a 3PL or 4PL that is more like a warehouse. And then you have users taking advantage of foreign trade zones. And then just real quick, I put a map up to the left. This is outlined in red, where I typically specialize with foreign trade zones. Right in the center is Fresno, so it's the surrounding counties of Fresno. And what we can provide is application assistance when becoming a foreign trade zone. We meet with companies. If you hear anything, you're like, wow, this can really benefit our company, we do a free cost benefit analysis. So that looks at how much the program, the cost of participation versus what your savings would be in year one and year two. We also have a warehouse space foreign trade zone in the Clovis area. And that's typically for smaller importers that want to take advantage of the benefits that we will begin talking about. All right, so now that we've said foreign trade zone, 20 times, let's go ahead and talk about what a foreign trade zone is. So by definition, a foreign trade zone is a secure area under U.S. Customs and Border Protection supervision that's generally considered out of CBP's territory. So when you read that definition, I know it seems a little bit confusing, but basically what it's saying is that goods are in the United States physically, but you're able to take advantage of our benefits because of the regulations. Okay. When you're at a foreign trade zone, it's not going to be like your typical store. It's going to be more of a distribution center or a warehouse. Once again, it can be your own facility as a foreign trade zone, or it could be like a 3PL or distributor. When you're in the foreign trade zone, what's really great about it is it's not meant to hinder your production line. So you are still able to manufacture as normal or manipulate as normal. All right, so now we're going to start talking about the benefits. And as we talk about the benefits, there's really two categories that can fall in. There's either an indirect savings or a direct savings. So the first one we're going to talk about is your duty deferral. So this is a very powerful indirect savings tool. Let's first talk about if you do not have a foreign trade zone. You buy a product from a manufacturer in a different country. You bring it to the United States by vessel or air or truck. It comes to the U.S. port of entry. you file entry, you pay your duties or tariffs, and then you bring it into the United States and business as usual. With a foreign trade zone, you are still buying it from your manufacturer. It is still coming to the port of entry by your preferred mode of transportation, but you are not filing entry at the port. You file for a movement to a foreign trade zone. And as long as it sits inside the foreign trade zone, you do not pay those duties or tariffs. Okay. It can sit there for 5 minutes. It could sit there for 10 years. There is not a specific time limit on the foreign trade zone, how long it can sit in there. So obviously this is a very big benefit for your cash flow. For example, if I buy something from China right now, you're typically seeing at least around 55%. That means if I have a container coming in of, let's say I have 20 boxes in it, you don't pay that 55% as long as it's in the foreign trade zone. You do pay the duties and tariffs when it leaves the foreign trade zone for consumption in the United States. Okay. Another benefit of this is if you had those 20 boxes in your container, you only pay the duties and tariffs on what actually leaves the foreign trade zone. So you're able to piecemeal it. So if you have 20 boxes, but you only ship 5 to the US market, you are only paying the duties and tariffs on those 5 boxes. Okay. So the next one is usually everyone's favorite, especially if you are importing and exporting, which typically they go hand in hand. If someone's importing, they're usually exporting as well. Duty elimination. So we're going to piggyback off of our last example. You bring product into the foreign trade zone. It's inside your foreign trade zone. You have not paid duties or tariffs. And now let's say that you have a buyer in Canada or any other foreign country. You get to export it directly from the foreign trade zone to the foreign country. And in this example, you get to completely eliminate that duty or tariff. Okay. So this is why it's everyone's favorite. You don't have to pay it and you get to basically bypass it. So if you are not using a foreign trade zone in the past, people may be taking advantage of the drawback program, which the drawback program means that you import your goods, you've paid your duties or tariffs, and then you later export them. Once again, this is without a foreign trade zone. And then if you've exported them, you might apply later for drawback, meaning you're saying, hey, I shipped this out. I want my money back because it didn't stay in the United States. With recent trade restrictions and tariff restrictions, this is not possible for some product now. And also with the foreign trade zone, it increases your cash flow because you didn't put out that percentage first. So really with the foreign trade zone, you eliminate it completely. You're not asking for your money back because you have never paid it. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is the weekly entry filing. So every single time without a foreign trade zone, you bring something in, you are going to pay the merchandise processing fee. It's a very small percentage, but the maximum you're going to pay is $634 per shipment. So this one is going to be a direct savings for companies that import frequently. Okay, so without the foreign trade zone, you pay that merchandise processing fee every time you have a shipment. With the foreign trade zone program, you get to take advantage of the weekly entry filing. So you consolidate all of your shipments into one weekly entry, and you only pay one merchandise processing fee regardless of volume. So in practice, let's say that you have 10 shipments coming in 1 week, and you are going to be paying $634 on every single shipment. That totals about $6,300 you would have paid without the foreign trade zone program. With the foreign trade zone program, it comes to your facility. You have not paid the merchandise processing fee, and you get to do the weekly entry, meaning you file one weekly entry and one merchandise processing fee of $634. So just in this example, 10 shipments a week, $6,300 paid for 1 week versus $634 in the foreign trade zone. All right, so this is the last benefit I would like to touch on today. This can be major savings for manufacturers. I do want to start by saying that with current tariff policies, the eligibility has narrowed to be able to take advantage of this. So just keep that in mind. Once again, if you think it could apply for you, we can always look at your specifics of what you're doing and what the HTS codes and what's the country of origin to see if this would apply for you. So if the final product's duty rate is lower than the combined duty on individual components, you would pay the lower duty rate when the finished product enters the United States. Okay. So we'll go through this example so you can see it. Without a foreign trade zone, on the top, you would be buying all of these parts at these different duty rates. Okay, when they came in, you would be paying these rates. You'd also be using domestic parts most likely. And then you finish your bike, you sell your bike. Okay, with a foreign trade zone, you're able to bring in all of these parts at these higher duty rates. But once again, when it's in the foreign trade zone, you have not paid these duty rates. As you're in the foreign trade zone, maybe you bring in domestic parts and I'm going to manufacture it into a finished bike. Okay, so at the bottom, you can see the finished bike duty rate is 5.5%, which is typically lower than all of your other parts. So the inverted tariff means that you are going to pay duty on the finished bike at 5.5% rather than the combined higher value with all of the parts. Okay, so this can be really beneficial to manufacturers if they are eligible for this benefit. And then to finish it off, just some quick other benefits that I can go into more. Excise taxes, inventory tax reduction. If you have scrap or waste or damaged material, you can also get relief there. If you go to trade shows a lot, you're able to do temporary removal. Maybe the FDA regulations, or you're subject to quota. These are all other benefits that you can encounter, but I shared the 4 biggest ones that we typically see a lot of interest in. Once again, that was duty deferral, duty elimination, weekly entry, and the inverted tariff. Okay. So if you saw anything on this page, I really encourage you can reach out to your grantee, or if you're in the Central Valley, we would love to assist you in getting a free cost benefit analysis and looking at what your savings could be. Or if you're near a port of entry, you might have a 3PL nearby that you can test out the foreign trade zone program and see if it is right for you. The trade world is ever changing, and it's a good information to have in your pocket if anything ever affects you. Otherwise, I am done, and I look forward to hearing from you all.
Lexi, thank you very much. For those attendees that did not see it, this event is being recorded. So you get a chance to play it once or twice. I was probably 3 or 4 times. So much great information on that. Thank you so much, Lexi. What we're going to do is we're going to move on to Bernadette, Dan, Mike, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions that's going to be asked to the speakers. So just to keep moving forward, and then at the we should be finished 15 minutes before that, and then we'll also have an opportunity to open up for questions to the attendees on that. So with that, I'd like to bring up our next speaker, Bernadette Rojas from the U.S. Department of Commerce. Welcome, Bernadette.
Thanks, Fred. Good morning and good afternoon. I would like to first thank NADAC for hosting this webinar and for you for joining us today. I'll have a brief presentation on how you can take advantage of exports, but also hopefully utilize some of the benefits of the foreign trade zone by re-exporting out your products into the out of the U.S. So as Fred mentioned, my name is Bernadette Rojas, and I'm the Central Valley and Coastal California Director at the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service in Fresno, California. I also serve as the Executive Secretary for the Central California District Export Council, and I work alongside Lexi. So Very excited to be working alongside her, and she's been just such a real gem to be part of the council. Let's see here. So our primary mission is to promote and develop U.S. exports by helping U.S. companies increase their international sales through exports. We have about 1,200 trade professionals globally with 106 offices. And as Fred mentioned earlier, I'm in charge of and responsible for, but really honored to work alongside. I lead an amazing team of trade professionals in our Fresno, Bakersfield, Ventura office. We also have about 127 commercial offices that are at the U.S. embassies and consulates in 80 countries. So that means that we can help you enter into over 90% of the world's export markets. And that's huge, right? Because you're able to leverage the government's established relationships, which helps companies succeed in those global markets. So throughout the U.S., our paralleled and unparalleled trade professionals can help you plan, strategize, and determine the best solutions from anything from legal or regulatory issues, finding out if you have any licensing or standards or documentation that's required for your product or service, even foreign direct investment into your city, as well as help you protect your intellectual property and when you export in overseas markets. A few that I will just quickly highlight for the interest of time. We can conduct a website globalization review where we will take a look at your website and we're going to assess it from a foreign buyer's perspective. We want to be your partner and help you enhance your international marketing and sales efforts by making it easier for an international buyers to find you so they can do business with you, right? And then we also provide several market research resources that help you determine the best trade opportunities. For example, our country commercial guide is anything and everything you're going to want to know on how to do business in 125 countries. They're authored by my colleagues at the embassy and consulate, but it is approved by the U.S. ambassador. So it is a viable, credible report. We can also conduct background checks on foreign companies. This detailed report will provide you with their profit figures, their liabilities, and other financial information that you will not have access to. But we will also interview that prospective foreign partner. It's also that you can take it, excuse me, and determine if this is going to be a viable potential partner for you. But our best work, excuse me, is spent connecting you with the right partners. We will arrange meetings. We'll pre-screen, pre-qualify potential partners for you, whether it's virtually or in person if you're flying to that country. And what that does is helps you minimize a guess of who they say they are, right? And if their interest is truly in a potential partnership that really you need to help build your brand awareness and sell those products in that country. And if you experience any import clearance delays in a foreign country, we will help you and clear those goods. And also we support your company if you run into any foreign bids that are adversary and affected in a form of a trade barrier in that country. And then we'll also contact a foreign buyer on your behalf because we want to help you get paid should they default on payment, right? So again, these are only a few topics that I've highlighted, and there's so much more in international trade, but know that we are here to help you throughout every step of the process. So it's important to recognize that a result of our assistance, the financial impact of the U.S. exports and inward investment is $161 billion to the U.S. economy, right? And then in fiscal year 2024, we assisted over 93,000 clients that supported over 500,000 jobs in trade and investment. And that's a huge impact in terms of our assistance. And so for every one tax dollar that is allocated to the U.S. commercial service, we return back $460 to the U.S. economy. And lastly, here is just a few of the feedback that has been said by clients across the country about our assistance from we're a hidden gem. And most importantly, they've shared that had it been not the help of the U.S. commercial service, they likely would not have made such a huge accomplishment in that country. So in short, we're here to help you increase your international sales because ultimately our mission again is to create demand for U.S. goods, which ultimately creates jobs in the United States. So thanks so much for your time, and Fred, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. And just a reminder to all of us, I'll be asking questions. And I've noted on the chat, there's some questions going to be asked, so we'll have plenty of time to ask questions to each of the speakers. Last but not least, certainly, is Mike Burrows, representing San Bernardino International Airport. He's our speaker, not the last one, but Mike, you're on.
All right, hopefully everybody can see that. All right. So as Fred mentioned, again, we got a little thing called an airport here down in San Bernardino. And like a lot of our other speakers here, I too am a district export council member of the California Inland Empire DEC. And as Bernadette talked about, if any of you have not yet leaned on the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Commercial Service, in expanding your businesses overseas, it really is an easy process. They make it easy for you. I certainly have taken advantage of that with the airport over the years, and just encourage you to reach out. They provide great assistance and have an immense amount of knowledge. So a little attaboy there. So if you don't know our region, the Inland Empire area of Southern California is year over year one of the fastest growing in the U.S. This past year, we were the 12th MSA in the country, just surpassed a little place called San Francisco. And in the scale of the area geographically is about the size of the state of South Carolina. So it's a large, rapidly growing area, right on the front door of the LA basin. So you see there within 120 minutes of us, you got 20 million people and counting, which for airports is kind of important. There's an old saying that aircraft land at airports, but airlines fly to markets. And that's really been our focus here with our various international trade tools, trying to make sure this is a good place to be able to do international trade and import export, not just for the airport, but the surrounding business parks. So you'll see, some fancy logos out there that have many of which come recently in the last decade or so. And we continue to grow it. One of the ways we did that early on was enter into a partnership with CBP, an airport partnership. So we are what they call a user fee airport. So we do have U.S. Customs officers on site, and they do help us support not just the airport activities, but a Class 3 bonded warehouse on airport. So this is where a lot of the air cargo dedicated freight can go when it needs to internationally, and onward and upward. Obviously, with the trade environment lately, we've got a lot of interest from shippers just to be able to utilize the Class 3 bonded facility, even for short periods of time. We really pride ourselves on being flexible with our customers. And for instance, if you were down the road a little bit at LAX, you would not be able to do what we do here in that you could utilize this facility on a per hour basis. So we have a base ground handler that helps supports the movement and the shipment in and out, but you only pay for it when you use it, which we really we're excited about when we launched it, and it's really been well received by a lot of our shippers. So cargo is kind of what has put us on the map in recent years. So if you look back down there at the chart, just 2016, out of 140 cargo airports in the country, we're about 139th. And then you see in recent years, we've been moving up the charts here. So globally and domestically, many of the large hub, medium hub airports have actually shed cargo. With our region and our airport, we've continued to maintain and incrementally grow that. We hit 25th in the country this past year. So those are some of the players, names that I think many of you will recognize there, that have come with to our airport and set up operations. UPS was the first one in 2017. The following year, FedEx followed with both an air and ground facility. And then we are the home to Amazon Air's Southern California air cargo hub here. It's a very large facility, about 100 acres. But our FTZ is one of the first tools that we assembled as we were just doing the planning here. As Fred mentioned earlier, we used to be an Air Force base, Norton, a supply base with a whole lot of international flights coming and going, as well as troop movements for that matter. So in 1996, we partnered with the good folks at the Port of Long Beach to become an expansion zone. We're 50-4. And we are also what they call a magnet site. So we have 175 acres, which in the old days was geographically specific. And we've had to update that as the business park and the airport continue to evolve. We're really pleased with the Port of Long Beach as a partner. They've got some great staff and some great resources to help promote the program with everything from big companies to little companies. And so there is our business park today. I skipped ahead a little bit. This is through a public-private partnership that we're probably most known for with our sister agency, the Inland Valley Development Agency. So all that area you see around there in our business park, it's called Alliance California, and it's branded after Alliance Texas. This is Ross Perot Jr.'s development company out of Fort Worth. And we essentially in 2001 became their West Coast expansion. We just hit 16 million square feet and counting. And you'll see some company names out there that you might recognize. So kind of establishing the FTZ was an important part of being able to get this kind of traction in the marketplace, being able to attract a firm like Hillwood to come and make investments. And to date, we've been able to incrementally replace the jobs that were lost due to the closure of the base, which was 10,000 at the time it was officially closed in 1994. This past year, we just surpassed 18,100 direct jobs, producing over 4 billion of economic output to the region. But as crystal balls go, this map is actually in 2009, when we were really starting to get traction with the business park, what we and our partners at Hillwood kind of envisioned would be the next opportunity for FTZ capabilities. And so you see that parcel C right there. We got pretty close with that one because that's right about the easternmost edge of the Amazon Air cargo hub right now. And that parcel E down there is actually now part of one of the first 2 Amazon fulfillment centers ever built in Southern California. So, as I say, as crystal balls go, we got pretty darn close. We're in shooting distance here. But the one real success out of the gate for us was actually over there where you see Pep Boys. So they were the very, very first user in our FTZ. And that's helped us also tell the story to a number of other 3PLs that have located since then. But as crystal balls go, in 2025, this is what we're in the process of doing right now, is reimagining, re-envisioning the FTZ and its capabilities to layer on top of airport assets and support facilities to be able to get more activity and more goods coming and going in and out of the region, particularly with the small and medium-sized business enterprises, which we're starting to see a lot of success and a lot of interest from. And certainly, as Lexi and Bernadette know, we're getting a lot of calls for these programs lately, which is a very good thing. And we want to make sure that we can respond appropriately here. So we get to go through what is called a reorganization now, which if you were back on the prior slide in 2009, it was called a minor boundary mod. Now we get to go through a reorganization, but it's the right thing to do for our customers and our customers' customers. So we're working very closely with the Port of Long Beach and the Foreign Trade Zones Board to get this processed as quickly as possible. But FTZs, you see a lot of big logos in our business park. It is one of those things that, particularly today, with the advancements in the programs, the services, as well as the technology, it really is not that difficult to set up activities and business ops within an FTZ. And if you haven't looked at it before, and you're in the region, or you have a customer or a client in the region nearby, please send them our way, and we'd love to introduce them to Alliance California and the airport. So I will go ahead and hand it back to you, Fred.
Thank you, Mike. Now I'm going to go through each one of the speakers, sort of back and forth. I'll start out with Lexi. Lexi, some of the questions that came up when I was writing it down as you were doing your presentation, this seems to come up all the time. What is the difference between an FTC and a bonded warehouse?
Yeah, so might be able to touch on this too, but there are some major differences between a bonded warehouse and a foreign trade zone. One of the ones is time limit. So bonded warehouse is typically 5 years. The foreign trade zone, there is no time limit that things can be stored. Another one is going to be what you can do in the warehouse. So a foreign trade zone program is meant to basically do whatever you're already doing. So you can manufacture in it, you can manipulate it. A bonded warehouse is going to be a lot more restricted on that. So typically a bonded warehouse is used for just storage and maybe some very light manipulation. Those are going to be the biggest differences. Otherwise, a bonded warehouse can be a good option as everyone's researching if you're only really looking for storage. Otherwise, a foreign trade zone, if you are manufacturing or manipulating, repackaging more, you're going to be wanting to go that route.
Well, thank you, Lexi. I'm going to jump over to Bernadette. Bernadette, you mentioned briefly about doing business overseas. Could you expand a little bit in terms of an exporter that's rather established or maybe a good starter, utilizing the U.S. and Commercial Services Department of Commerce? How do they enter the foreign market, as an example?
Yeah, Fred, that's a great question. I'll try and be very brief based on our time. Traditionally, we work with companies who have already had a product or service that have been sold in the domestic market for about a year or so, right? And then we'll assess that you're export ready, meaning do you have your documentation, your schedule be identified, you have logistics that have been identified, your pricing strategy, to your, protecting your IP. And if you don't have some of those or none are missing or none of those are established, we'll work alongside a partner here locally, like the Small Business Development Center, to help you become export ready. And in the meantime, what we would do is, kind of determine based on your schedule B, what market potential is your product being currently exported to. We have a vast amount of market resources available on trade.gov. But let's say particularly you were interested in Canada and Mexico, we would traditionally have you fill out a quick application. There's no cost for us to help you unless we go out and do something succinct for your company. My colleagues and I will work together with you on a virtual call in country and talk about your market entry strategies. What are the opportunities? What challenges might you have in that country? So that we can help you truly assess if that market is really worth your time based on our professional opinion. My colleagues at the embassy and consulates are from that country. They speak the language, but they're industry specialized. So that's where you're able to leverage the key relationships from the government that are already established. So we'll say, yes, you do have potential. Do you want to meet them virtually, or do you want to come on out to the country? Do you have plans to do that? And so we'll arrange those pre-screened and pre-qualify them for you up to like 5. And when we do something succinct like that, a cost recovery is probably about $900, $950, but each state has a STEP grant that you can apply for and get reimbursed for it. So it's basically helping you out and not even have to utilize any fees out of your own company's pockets. But that's a quick snapshot, Fred, on how we'll help a company actually enter into a foreign market.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. I'm going to move on to Mike. Mike, congratulations on some of the expansions that you have starting in 2017. I wanted to ask you in terms of some of the advantages of FTCs that are provided to business operating in San Bernardino Airport today. How are they unique comparing to other logistics hubs in Southern California?
Well, one of the things that we get a lot of support for from really the 3PL community, which kind of co-locates. Obviously, you saw in there we've got Amazon and a lot of Amazon interest in the region. What that has really drawn from us and to us is the small and medium-sized business enterprises that are suppliers for Amazon and their partners. And having the FTZ has really been an attractant for them, especially dealing with a mixed product array out there to where they can actually come in and activate, whether it be in the magnet side or under the expansion zone capability. Again, the time to market on it is a fraction of what it used to be back when we first started in the FTZ. And hats off to the Foreign Trade Zones Board and the port for making it a fairly seamless process. But I will say, as Lexi pointed out, between a bonded warehouse and an FTZ, a lot of the questions we get, particularly from those SME communities, is, well, you've got your airport bond. We're just going to use that. Well, in addition to the time limits there, the CBP staff that support container freight stations are actually different than the CBP staff that support airport and air cargo. And then obviously the FTZ folks, have their own niche as well. So thankfully, we're kind of got our toes on all of those waters. So it allows us, with those new companies coming to the region, to be able to point them in the right direction. So it saves them time when they're really, setting up operations. As a result, in our 16 million square foot business park, companies that have located have stayed, which is really exciting. It's a big calling card for us and our partners at Hillwood. They too have an FTZ team that they staff in Dallas in their headquarters. So we're able to bring a lot of expertise to bear depending on the customer and the product type and what their needs are. So.
Well, thank you, Mike. Some of the other questions as I'm looking at is that those that are interested in the process of establishing a foreign trade zone. Lexi, can you share with us a little bit, I know it's probably pretty cumbersome, but what is the application process look like?
Sure. I think I could do an entire webinar on
I bet
that
you
question.
can.
So in short, it's typically a two-step process. I will note on Mike's, correct me if I'm wrong, in certain areas, you get to bypass the first part of the application because it has already been designated. Okay, so the first step is to make sure you designate the area that is going to become a foreign trade zone. So there are areas already, as Mike showed in his map, that have been designated. Okay, and that's basically saying that you can activate a foreign trade zone in that area. You do not need to be up and running already to be designated. And that's typically what the grantee in your area and the Foreign Trade Zones Board. The average time is 30 to 45 days approval time. However, it could be longer depending on what's going on with all of your counterparts. The second part is activation. So if you were in Mike's area and you chose a piece that was already designated, Fresno also has areas that have already been designated. You can then activate that area. And that's submitting to the Foreign Trade Zone Board what operations are going to be done there. It's a little bit more in depth than designating your area. And that's 30 to 90 days on average, but once again, can be longer depending on what is needed. During this time, you would secure your foreign trade zone bond. you might have additional inventory control compliance needed or security enhanced. And that's something that you look at as you go on in that application. So once again, it's a two-step process, and really you're working close with your grantee and the Foreign Trade Zone Board. And once again, there's a lot more to it there, but in short, that's the two-step process.
I'm going to open it up to some of the questions that's already been posted on the chat. And one of the questions that came up, please provide a recap of tariffs that are not eligible for foreign trade zone benefits. That opens it up to all three speakers. But feel free to jump in on that. Lexi, Mike.
Yes. I won't pretend to be an expert on every single HTS code. In general, it's not that they're not eligible for foreign trade zone benefits. It's that with these new tariffs, there are some restrictions. So for example, for some of them, you're no longer for duty drawback, okay? With the foreign trade zone, you can still typically bring it into a foreign trade zone. One of the restrictions is that you need to bring it into a foreign trade zone as privileged foreign status, meaning when it is admitted to the foreign trade zone, you are, quote, locking in the rate, okay? So let's say that you bring it in, it's at 55% right now. It's in your facility in the foreign trade zone. You've locked in that 55%. You cannot lower it with the inverted tariffs. If the tariff were to lower, lots of times you're not eligible for the lower duty rate, okay? Because you have locked in that duty rate. The same can be said, you've locked in 55%. Let's say it increases to 100. You've typically locked in that 55%, not the higher duty rate. And once again, everything is subject to change. It could be tomorrow and there's new regulations or an executive order that changes what I've just discussed. But typically that's what we're seeing. In regards to restrictions in a foreign trade zone, I know that there are restrictions in regards to solar panels, illegal substances, but bringing into the foreign trade zone, you still get the benefits of duty deferral and duty elimination. It's going to be that manufacturing benefit of inverted tariff. And then if the tariffs were to go down, you typically locked in this rate, once again, unless an executive order says differently.
Thank you, Lexi. I want to jump over to Mike, and he mentioned just briefly, but Mike, you're coming up with some of the great projects coming up for 2025. Can you share perhaps maybe some new initiative for strategic that the airport is pursuing to leverage foreign trade zone for future growth and also address some of the emerging challenges in the logistics center?
Obviously what I shared in the presentation, the biggest effort is that reorganization of the magnet site is our primary focus from the FTZ perspective, to be able to get that designated acreage on terra firma where the shippers and the customers need it. In addition, we are working very closely with CBP to supplement staffing here in the region. Our cousins just down the road to the west from us at Ontario International Airport have been also making some strides there to supplement CBP staff for our inland Southern California region. And those two priorities go all the way to DC these days. So a lot of my time and my colleagues' time are really focused on those two components, but they go hand in hand. We're seeing a lot of current demand for container freight station. And as I mentioned, even though we've got talented teams sitting here at the airport every day, it's a different CBP that handles container freight stations. So we're trying to make sure we can get those resources here locally, so they don't have to come all the way out from LAX. Because for those of you that have been to Southern California, Getting to and from LAX these days could be an hour and a half. It could be 3.5 to 4 hours. And when you're in the international trade arena and you're shipping your freight, trucking your freight, every minute matters. And we're trying to shorten those distances, drive times, and turnaround times. So that's really where we're focused.
Thank you, Mike. The next question from one of the attendees, and it's from an SME perspective. And the question was asked, what's the typical range of cost, starting with pre-application, assessment, application itself, implementation, and ongoing compliance, which may vary based on staff capability. I know it's more than 2 or 3 questions, but perhaps maybe Lexi, can you address that?
Yes.
And
The
Mike?
short answer is it greatly depends. Wish it was a one size fits all, that I could just throw out a number so you can see it, but it really depends. I'll go into that a little bit more. If a small business wanted to utilize a 3PL, foreign trade zone, so they were just using it as a warehouse and it wasn't their own foreign trade zone, you're looking at really minimal costs. So it might be slightly more than their typical warehouse costs. Otherwise, they can utilize it as a warehouse. If they were to become their own foreign trade zone, to go in order here, the pre-application return on investment. So typically I've seen that we offer that for free. So we would sit there, we would look at their numbers, and they could see what it would cost to participate, and they could see what they would be getting back or saving. So typically that's free. We don't want people spending money on something that they're not even going to use. The application. So the application, once again, it's a 2-part application, the designation and then the activation. That depends. Are they already in a designated area, or are they doing both applications? So one thing that someone can look there is go to their grantee. So you can literally type in Foreign Trade Zone Board grantee. You should be able to find which area you fall under. There is an annual fee and typically an application fee paid to the grantee. Okay, so you could easily go in and find that number. Implementation. So going back to application, it is common for people to work with foreign trade zone consultants. If you're in the Central Valley, we'd love to help you. If you're in other areas, you can get a foreign trade zone consultant, or you can do the application yourself. So that's really going to vary on which route you take. Implementation, once again, is going to vary whether you have a consultant or someone on hand that is experienced with the foreign trade zones. Ongoing compliance, which we offer to our clients. So once again, you're either going to want someone that can provide the ongoing compliance, or you're going to want an employee that's knows what they're doing with foreign trade zones to make sure that you're following those regulations. So once again, the short answer is it depends and where you're at and what your fees would look like. But if you are interested, the first place to start always is going to be with someone for your free cost benefit analysis, to even look what your savings would be. And then you can leverage that about whether you want to do it or not.
Well, thank you, Lexi. On behalf of the National District Export Council, I just wanted to take a moment and give Lexi a big hand, Bernadette and Mike Burrows. As you could see, this is an introductory. We've done it but there are going to be a follow-up series on it. And I just want to remind the attendees, if those of you that are interested in sponsoring an event like this, be happy to contact Heidi.